Imagine a room so vast that the light itself seems to hesitate before touching the floor. 150 feet overhead, iron and glass ribs arc like the vaulting of some ancient Roman bath, because that is exactly what they were modeled after. This is the main waiting room of Pennsylvania Station, New York City. And in 1963, they started tearing it down. Pennsylvania Station opened in 1910, the crowning achievement of the Pennsylvania Railroad and its president, Alexander Cassatt. The architect was Charles Follen McKim of McKim, Mead White, a man who believed that a great city deserved great public spaces, and that arriving in New York should feel like entering a cathedral. The station occupied 2 full city blocks between 7th and 8th Avenues, from 31st to 33rd Street. Its facade presented a colonnade of 84 Doric columns, each 35 feet tall, carved from pink Milford granite. The main waiting room drew directly from the baths of Caracalla in Rome, not as imitation, but as inheritance. McKim believed American democracy was heir to the classical tradition, and he built accordingly. For half a century, Penn Station was the gateway to Manhattan. Millions passed beneath its eagles and through its luminous halls. It was not merely a train station, it was a civic argument that public infrastructure could be monumental, beautiful, and democratic all at once. But by the 1950s, the Pennsylvania Railroad was hemorrhaging money. Passenger rail had lost its war with the automobile and the airplane. The railroad's revenues declined year after year, and that enormous station, sprawling across some of the most valuable real estate in the world, started to look less like a monument and more like a liability. In 1962, the railroad announced a deal. The station above ground would be demolished and replaced by a new Madison Square Garden and an office complex. Rail service would continue underground, in a cramped, low-ceilinged labyrinth beneath the new development. The reaction was not immediate, not at first. New York, in the early 1960s, was a city in love with the new, with glass towers and urban renewal, and the promise that progress meant replacement. But a group of architects, critics, and citizens saw what was about to happen and tried to stop it. They picketed outside the station. Architects marched with signs. The critic, Ada Louise Huxtable, wrote with barely concealed fury about the destruction of what she called one of the finest examples of Beaux-Arts architecture in America. The Municipal Art Society organized protests. Philip Johnson appeared among the demonstrators. None of it mattered. The station had no legal protection. New York City had no landmarks preservation law. There was no mechanism, none, to prevent an owner from demolishing a building, no matter how significant. The wrecking ball was not illegal. It was simply business. Demolition began in October 1963. It was not swift. The station did not go quietly. The granite columns had to be broken apart piece by piece. The great iron trusses were cut down with torches. The stone eagles that had perched above the entrance were pulled from their roosts and hauled away. Pieces of the station, columns, ornamental stonework, fragments of those eagles, were dumped in the Secaucus Meadowlands in New Jersey, buried in a swamp like evidence of a crime. The demolition continued for years. By 1966, the station above ground was gone. In its place rose the new Madison Square Garden, a concrete cylinder that has never once been called beautiful, and a warren of underground corridors and low-ceilinged platforms that serve as the current Penn Station. The busiest rail hub in North America became its most reviled architectural space. The loss was galvanic. Historian Randall Mason has noted that the demolition of Penn Station in 1963 is commonly identified as the birth of historic preservation in New York and the United States, though he has worked to complicate that narrative. arguing that the preservation movement had deeper and broader roots. What is beyond dispute is the direct legislative consequence. In 1965, just 2 years after demolition began, New York City enacted its Landmarks Preservation Law and established the Landmarks Preservation Commission. The federal government followed in 1966 with the National Historic Preservation Act. The death of Penn Station did not start the preservation movement, but it armed it with law. Today, proposals continue to reimagine the site. The Moynihan Train Hall opened in 2021 across 8th Avenue in the old Farley Post Office, itself a McKim, Mead and White building. Attempts to restore some dignity to the experience of arriving in New York. It is graceful. It is luminous. It is not Penn Station. The editorial board of the New York Times wrote, at the time of demolition, words that have become a kind of epitaph for the preservation movement. Until the first blow fell, no one was convinced that Penn Station really would be demolished, or that New York would permit this monumental act of vandalism. Some buildings are torn down, others are murdered. The difference is what we learn from the body.